What's happening, Hardscapers? Today we're going to go through 5 reasons why pavers fail. Let's get into this. So if you don't know me, my name is Mike. I own and operate a small hardscaping business in the Greater Toronto area. And I've been in business for 5 years, been in the industry for about 15 now when I started with a supplier. And on the side, and even when I started my own business, I started with fixing paver projects. The paver projects that had settled, sunk, or just looked terrible, and I would come in there and fix them. So I've got a lot of different experience in seeing different reasons why paver projects fail. These are definitely common things that do occur when it comes to the installation process, but they can be prevented and they can definitely be fixed, but some fixes are more expensive and more intricate than others. So I'm going to get into the 5 reasons why pavers fail for this. And to be honest, a lot of this has to do with the base, but we're going to break that down into several different factors. Factor number 1 is the base material. The base material needs to be a properly spec'd out material that's approved. ICPI, or the Interlocking Concrete Pavement Institute, has specific aggregates that are approved for installation, but there's also others that you can also use, but you can never ever use stone dust. Stone dust will trap the water. It doesn't allow for the drainage of that water. So any water that hits that stone dust, it won't drain through it. It'll just stay there, which causes all kinds of problems, including efflorescence buildup on the surface of the pavers, which is that white residue that you see that stains the pavers. And that's caused because that water just keeps those bricks saturated. And when that water finally is able to evaporate, it'll go through those pavers to the surface, bringing salts with it, and then those salts get deposited on the surface of those pavers. So that's why you should definitely not use stone dust. And there's still so many other reasons why not to use stone dust. So if you want to watch my video on stone dust, go to our channel page and type in stone dust. You'll definitely see one of our videos pop up there. But there's a few methods that we like to use for our projects. We like to use a traditional base, which would be a 3/4 inch stone down to fines. This is like an A gravel, or there's many different names to call this, but ultimately it's that 3/4 inch angular crushed stone down to fines. And that's what makes up the majority of the base. And then our bedding layer, that final screeded layer that gets a nice smooth surface, we use HPB, or a 1/4 inch chip. And this is a clean stone. It's clear. That means there's no fines in it. It's just that clean chip that we use to screed out for our bedding material. And in fact, we're always almost going to use that HPB as our bedding material. It's just perfect for drainage. It's perfect to work with. It's an excellent, excellent product. And then the second base we're going to use is an open graded base. So instead of that 3/4 inch down to fines, it's just going to be a clear 3/4 inch material. This allows water to go completely through it. It's got void space, and it's an excellent choice for a base product. And in addition to that, we're going to use a biaxial geogrid at some place in that base material, typically further down that base material than higher. It stabilizes the material that you put on top of it, so it just adds a little bit more stability in your base. It's definitely worth the investment. And then our final base installation would be synthetic base. This is using these polypropylene base panels. They insulate the ground, they spread out the load over a wider area. They're excellent for those tight access situations where you can't get a machine into the backyard. And then we can't forget the geotextile. This goes at the bottom of your project. This separates the base material from the subsoil, so there's no contamination between the two, and it's going to add some tensile strength. Also, we install it on every single one of our projects, and so many failed projects that I lifted up never had that geotextile installed with it. So it's something that I stick with, as well as all these different base material preparation methods that I went through there. I can't tell you how many projects I lifted up that had stone dust, or even worse, which brings me to our second point, and that's the base depth. A lot of projects that I lifted up had inadequate base depth, and that's important when it comes to creating a solid foundation for your project to sit on. There's not much to talk about here really with this. Just have adequate base depth for the climate that you are in. For example, in Toronto, we have multiple freeze thaw cycles every year in the winter, so we want to make sure we have adequate drainage below our surface, and that means having proper base depth, which for us, I do a minimum of 6 inches for patios to a max of 8 inches typically. And then for a driveway, we're a minimum of 12 inches, but more than likely going above that. But even as equally important is making sure that you get all organic material out of that excavated area. We did a project this year where we actually ran into a tree trunk, and we need to get that completely removed because that will rot and that will settle down in the future. So we want to get all organic material. That includes soil that has lots of organic content. We want to get down to those structural subsoils, those clays, those sands, silty sands, whatever that might be. That is the structural foundational soil in that area. And then we go on to the next step after that excavation and getting down to our subsoils, and we get to point number 3 here, and that is compaction. Poor compaction will lead to failure every single time. So make sure you have the right compaction equipment available to you for your project, as well as make sure that you have proper and adequate compaction of those materials. This is a video all in of itself with this. There's so many different things to get into, but ensure that you're not just renting the smallest compactor from your local hardware store. Make sure that you're getting an adequate compactor for your project. When it comes to compacting subsoil, you want something that has a ramming action to it. So a jumping jack or a rammer really helps with that. But for more granular soils, as well as the base material, you can get away with a plate compactor, preferably a reversible, and preferably something that has at least 4,000 pounds of centrifugal force or greater. And the rule of thumb is for every 1,000 pounds of centrifugal force that the compactor exerts, that is the equivalent to 1 inch of material being compacted. So 1,000 for every 1 inch, and you can't exceed that, otherwise you're not going to get proper and adequate compaction. Point number 4 is edge restraint. Edge restraint is another common failure, and what you'll typically see is the plastic edge restraint popping out of the ground. Ultimately, this could be due to it being installed too high. What you need to do is actually scrape away that bedding material, that 1 inch layer, and then install the edge restraint on top of your base material, but it can still pop out over time with freeze-thaw cycles. What we've gone ahead and done is actually installed a concrete toe along our pavers. This works a lot better in terms of keeping that plastic edge restraint from popping up, and we've had a lot of great success in installing that concrete toe, so that's the way that we're going to go. Get rid of that plastic edge restraint, at least in our own experience here. Another common thing that we'll see is actually those pavers on the edge slipping away from the patio. And that's not actually due to the edge restraint, that's more so the base, because we should see an extension of that base past that final paver by the amount of the depth of the base. So the base is 6 inches, that base is going to extend past that final paver 6 inches. This gives that final paver a great platform to sit on, a great foundation, and it's not going to slip away. Even a great installed edge restraint is not going to prevent that. And finally, number 5, probably the most common failure that we'll see is the jointing compound. And there's so many different reasons why this could be the case. It could just be the jointing compound is just a typical sand and it's growing weeds out of it and insects getting all over it and wasn't sealed to be able to stabilize that sand jointing. It could be poorly installed polymeric sand. It could be just polymeric sand that was installed properly but got hit with a rainstorm right after it. There's many different reasons for this jointing compound failure, and we've actually got a video specifically about that because that's a lot to get into. So if you want to learn more about jointing compounds, best to go to our channel, search jointing compounds, you'll get more information there. But typically if it was installed poorly, that's a step that was missed, and a common step that's missed is the compaction of that jointing compound into the joints of those pavers. That sets the pavers into the bedding material, and it allows that sand to work its way all the way down to the bottom of those joints. And that's incredibly important to the lockup or the interlocking of that interlocking concrete pavement. And those are the 5 common reasons why pavers fail. If you have any more that you'd like to add to this list, leave it in the comment section below. Like this video if you found it helpful for whatever reason, and definitely check out those other videos that we have on our channel there that we talked about in this, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more hardscaping content like this. Thank you so much for watching.